Are you a scaling SaaS founder?
Ready to make the leap from leading a team to leading an organization? Join us each week as we refill your think tank with actionable tips and strategies from great business minds you know and those who don't know yet. This is SaaS Fuel with your host, 5-time entrepreneur, SaaS founder, and globetrotting adventurer, Jeff Maines.
Welcome back to the SaaS Fuel podcast, where our origin story includes a secret lab, a bolt of lightning, a radioactive shark bite, and the sudden ability to turn challenges into victories faster than a speeding bullet. I'm your host, Jeff Maines. I help B2B SaaS founders like you grow from traction to scale. Here, growth is more than just numbers. It's about crafting a future-proof company, premium valuation, and leaders who build a business of significance while living epic, adventurous lives. Once upon a time. Oh, wait, wrong show. But stick with me because we're about to dive into why those 4 words might be the most important or most powerful tool in your entrepreneurial arsenal. You know, I recently met a founder who could rattle off profit margins and growth projections like a human calculator. Impressive? Sure. Memorable? About as much as yesterday's oatmeal, unless you had chili the night before. And then, anyway. But he told me why he started his company as a story of personal struggle, a eureka moment, and a burning desire to make a difference. And suddenly, I wasn't just listening, I was invested. Here's the thing. In a world drowning in data, stories are the life raft that we cling to. And for founders, a powerful origin story isn't just a nice to have, it's your secret weapon. It's marketing gold, but better because it's authentic, memorable, and incredibly shareable. So let's break this down. First up, emotion trumps logic every time. We have to emotionally connect with your audience. Study at Harvard Business Review found that emotionally connected customers are more than twice as valuable as highly satisfied ones. Your origin story is your emotional superglue. It helps people see the human behind the brand, turning casual buyers into die-hard fans. Next, let's talk values, aligning with customer values. Whopping 71% of consumers prefer buying from companies that align with their values, according to Accenture. Your origin story is your chance to wear your values on your sleeve. You know, are you all about sustainability, innovation, social impact? Weave that into your narrative. And then finally, in the age of social media, shareability is king. We have to create that shareable narrative. People love sharing stories that resonate with them. In fact, stories are 22 times more memorable than facts alone. How about that? Craft a story worth retelling and you've got an army of brand ambassadors at your fingertips. But here's the kicker. And this is actually for me one of those, I was today years old when I learned moments. Your origin story isn't just about where you've been, it's about where you're going. And done well, your origin story is the thread that connects your past to your future and brings your customers along for that ride. And I don't know why I didn't connect that in my mind before. I always thought past to present, origin to now. But there's so much more to the story. We want to take them on that ride to the future. How about we put down the spreadsheets for a few minutes and pick up the pen? What's the story that only you can tell? Uniquely you, uniquely your company. How did your journey begin? What problem are you hell-bent on solving and why do you care so much about it? Why should we care that you care? You got to tell us. And in a world of endless options, people don't just buy products or solutions, they buy the stories behind them. Think about your favorite brands. I bet it's true. So what is your story? It's time to tell it loud, proud. Your audience is waiting and trust me, they're all ears. So who has the most compelling origin story? Reply back with your story, text, video, however you want to do it. Drop it in the comments and I will use the top 3 or 4 on the show. Plus give you a free sponsor spot promoting your company and do it in a way where you can repurpose it in your own marketing. You can even use the tips from our guest today to help create it. Tell your story. Your customers want to hear it. Our founder on Tuesday was Randy Wooten, CEO of Maxio, and he shared powerful insights from 20 years of scaling SaaS companies and driving strategic growth. We talked about Maxio's rebranding from the combination of SaaS Optics and Chargeify, mistakes founders make in finance and revenue, and the 2024 SaaS Performance Metrics Benchmark Report. Extremely valuable, and I still can't believe they give it away for free. They don't charge for it at all. It's linked in the show notes if you want to grab a copy of that, and I'll add it there this next week as well. And then last week was SaaS Pricing Week, and on Thursday we had Pat Megan wrapping it up. Pat is managing director at Maple Street IGS, where he leads the pricing and consulting practice and helps companies leverage customer insights to achieve long-term revenue and profit growth. We talked about value-driven pricing and packaging models that drive expansion, and really smart way to increase pricing so that everyone wins. It's pure genius. If you missed either one of those episodes, go back and give them a listen. My guest today is Naomi Soman. Naomi has worked in several high-growth startups in Tel Aviv, the heart of Startup Nation, from scrappy Series A startups to a powerful unicorn. Now she works at SimilarWeb, where she writes all the copy for the PPC team. By investing heavily in qualitative and quantitative customer research, leveraging battle-tested frameworks, and mercilessly analyzing and optimizing results. Naomi knows how to tell a brand story, and she doesn't stay shallow. She knows how to reach down below the surface to capture the stories that really matter. Welcome someone who doesn't just tell stories that drive extraordinary performance. She crafts stories that make a brand worth believing in. Welcome, Naomi Soman. Hey, Naomi, welcome to SaaS Fuel.
Thanks so much for having me.
Well, can you share a little bit about your journey working in high-growth startups or hyper-growth startups and now at SimilarWeb? And what drew you to specialize in performance marketing and copywriting?
Yeah, it's a great question. I studied literature, and when I came to Tel Aviv, which has such a thriving tech ecosystem, I ended up in a company that was super data-driven. And they would test everything. They would test everything down to like just showing a picture of a redheaded girl or a blonde girl perform better.
Wow.
And I found that actually being so close to that level of data and really being immersed in all of those, in the world of copy and testing, was fascinating because you can learn very quickly about what works and what doesn't work. And so there are all of these fascinating things that you end up learning about what drives people and what doesn't. And in general, I think that a lot of marketing teams struggle in that area because in a lot of marketing teams, you have people who are really great campaign managers and you have a lot of really creative people, but they don't always know how to talk to each other. So what I try to do in teams is I will go and look into Google Ads or look into Tableau or the CRM, understand what's going on in these campaigns, and then translate those insights into better creatives.
I like that. And last time we talked, you actually talked about something that you do that is really rare, and I wish more people in your role did, and that is actually listening to sales calls and really capturing those customer pain points so you can turn that into copy, into content.
Yeah. So I love listening to sales calls because a lot of times in a lot of B2B companies, we don't have access to customers. We can't just pick up the phone and call them. It's hard to set up a Zoom, especially if you're working with enterprise customers. You can't just call up the head of product and be like, hey, do you have 20 minutes to talk to me? No, they don't really have time.
Sure.
So sales calls are the next best thing, the next best way to access that information. And so I listen to demo calls and I will also listen to discovery calls. Those first 20 minutes that a sales rep will jump on a call with a prospect. That's when you get so much gold. They'll talk about what was going on in their life. They'll talk about their problems and you'll get these vivid descriptions. One of my favorite was, I was in Excel hell. There were so many spreadsheets. The spreadsheets had so many tabs in them that we couldn't keep track of anything. Or there was another one about a payments company. I was working in a payments company and the prospect had boxes of checks in their office that they couldn't cash because they didn't have the resources in-house to be able to process all those payments. And it's sometimes that level of specificity that ends up becoming the most powerful copy. Not only because it's so relatable and so vivid and descriptive, but also because it's a jargon buster. How many times do we see this copy on websites and it's just full of jargon, it's full of buzzwords, it's difficult to understand, and we all make that mistake. But it's hard to fix it. How do you fix it? by finding those descriptions from the actual users. And so that's why I really love listening to sales calls.
That's really good. Even in what you were saying there, it is very relatable, but it's also story. So you're kind of showing that the journey of somebody going from where they are, Excel hell, to the solution to their real problem. But it's that story that I think we can all relate to. I mean, just the not having the resources, and at the same time, maybe a little bit of a story of, wow, that company, they have stacks of checks that they can't cash, they don't have the resources. We're not that bad. So maybe it gives me a little bit of hope. If they could survive and they could find the solution, maybe we can too. Is storytelling a key piece to what you're doing in your copy?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Those moments help bring the story to life in a way that sort of descriptions of features or benefits never could. It helps to take that prospect and move them from sort of a resume on a sheet of paper to a real life person, like walking around somewhere in the world. And I think that's really the key. It makes it real. It draws us in to the world. It gives it that aha moment. When you find the right pain point and you describe it in the right way, and somebody goes, "Oh my God, I deal with that every day. That's so frustrating." Yes. That's what you want to hit. That's exactly the moment that you want the reader to have.
That's so good. And it's so relatable. And when you do that well, then it's like people see themselves in that story and they're like, that's me. You understand my life. You understand what I'm going through on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. And people want to be understood more than anything. I think we always forget this, but people want to be seen. They want to be heard. They want somebody to know what they're going through. And when you can reflect back to them what they're going through those examples, they'll trust you because they'll know, oh, they understand me. So they're going to have a solution that'll help me.
So how can SaaS companies create those relatable and engaging stories to drive conversions? Is there a formula you use, or how do you put that into practice?
Well, there are really three things that I look for. So pain points is one, and that's a really powerful one, especially early on in the funnel. If you're creating social media content or you're creating like ads that are supposed to generate awareness, get people to look for your name on Google, or commercials, that's where you really want to agitate the pain points. But you also want to, I call this dream states. You want to document examples of what success looks like. And success looks like different things for different people. And there are different kinds of success. You have like the obvious success, like we saved money, we saved time, we are more organized. And then you have the more emotional side of success, like I feel like I'm more in control, or my teammates appreciate me, or they admire me or respect me, or everyone knows our company's name because now we're seen as industry leaders because we adopted this new technology. And also on top of that, you have success for different members of the buying committee. So you have the end user, you may have the champion, then you have upper management, and that'll look very different depending on who you are. So you want to explain what success looks like, and you want to put that down on your page as well. And then the third thing that I look for is what's holding them back. And I think this is what really where people, really what people forget, because we don't realize that a lot of times the users are not converting, not because they're going to our competitors, but they're just not making a decision. They're just stopping through friction. And so you don't want to forget to figure out what's holding them back, their doubts, their concerns, their hesitations. Are they worried that your solution won't integrate with their other tools? Are they worried that their team isn't going to use it, so the money is going to go to waste? Are they worried that they're not going to be able to get the full use out of it because it's too complicated. Whatever it is that concern is, usually it's not price. Usually it's something else. You want to make sure to figure out what that is, and then put that on the page as early as possible so that you're addressing those concerns before they can become friction points.
That's really, really good. You're right. 60% of deals are lost to no decision, and they're just lost. They didn't choose a competitor. They just didn't do anything.
Exactly.
And I think you really nailed it of, why is it? What is it that's holding them back? What is it that's stopping them from taking that action?
Yeah. And then I would say the other part of a story, right? If we think about our favorite stories, we have the hero, that's the user. Yep. We have the assistant, that's going to be the product. We have the plot. We just talked about the plot points, but we got to have a villain. Who's going to be the villain in our story? No one thinks about the villain. But like when we think of like Batman, right? The Joker, what an iconic villain.
Sure.
So you need to have a villain for your story. Now, sometimes that can be the competitor. Like you think of the old PC versus Apple ads. That could totally work. But I think most of the time it's what's ever holding them back. So I mentioned spreadsheets before when I was at Monday.com. Spreadsheets were always the villain. They were always the thing holding you back. And spreadsheets are not branded, so you don't have to call anyone out.
Right.
And so you can say, like, there are too many tabs, it's too disorganized, nothing is up to date, people are ignoring it, they're using other solutions, whatever it is. So if you can find, or like if you're giving away an ebook, maybe the enemy is like LinkedIn gurus who are giving you or giving inspirational advice, but can't actually walk you through a complicated process. So it can be a lot of different things, depending on what you're trying to promote to who at what stage of the funnel. But you got to have an enemy because no story is complete without the enemy.
That's really, really good. I think a lot of people don't think about that. So you want that the hero's journey, and you want to talk about features and benefits and the other side, so that change state, but not really what you have to overcome to get there. So I think that's a really interesting twist. What is the villain? How do you go about finding the villain when you're looking at a product or a solution, or from one company to another? Spreadsheets was your villain at Monday. How do you find that villain?
I think you have to ask people what they're currently using, what product they've tried. If it's a very, very saturated space, usually they will have tried a couple of different solutions. A lot of times it's a manual solution. What are you doing now to accomplish this goal or to complete this process that's not working? Because whatever the problem is, they're already doing something. And they usually want to upgrade it. And so a lot of times it's what manual process are you using that's broken, because we're going to upgrade that and give you a technological solution that's going to make it really easy. So that's usually the answer. But this is part of the discovery process, and this is a good way for marketing and sales to work together. That's a pain point in pretty much every organization I've ever worked with. But the sales team, whoever is getting on these discovery calls, they should definitely be asking, what are you using now that's not working for you? Or what solutions have you tried? So you really want to make sure that you go over to the sales team and you work with them and make sure that they're extracting all of this valuable information for you.
Oh, that's really, really smart. So when you're extracting the information, how do you balance like qualitative versus quantitative customer research? What insights can each type of the research provide?
Yeah, that's a great question. I hear this a lot because people say, well, you've only interviewed this many people, or you've only gotten answers from this many people. Is this true for all of our customers? And I think that's where testing comes in, because this is never going to be a scientific process. Like, yes, you want to do research, And you can run surveys, you can run polls, and that can provide a little bit more data. There are a lot of user testing tools that I've used that are very, very helpful. But at the end of the day, your best form of validation, your best form of feedback are your actual results. So if you take like 5 different Facebook ads with 5 different angles and you launch them and 2 of them perform really well, you have a good reason to believe that there's a reason why they performed well. Now, of course, you have design and you have copy and you have targeting, and there are lots of different factors whenever you run a campaign. But the reason why campaigns are so valuable is because they not only is it an important marketing channel, but they give you a lot of feedback very, very quickly. And then if you can continually test with ads across different platforms, and you'll get a very good sense very quickly of whether your messaging is hitting or whether it's not hitting. And then once you have those answers, you can use that information, you can use that messaging across platforms where you don't have that immediate feedback. So email, for example, or out-of-home campaigns. If you're running a big billboard campaign or you're creating a commercial these kind of campaigns, you're not going to get clicks or conversions the same way you would with Facebook or LinkedIn. So once you have that information and you're a little bit more confident in it, then you can take it elsewhere.
Makes a lot of sense. You talked about having different types of users, like on a buying committee. And I've seen a lot of SaaS companies use the same message for their users and kind of out there to the market. And they use that same messaging for their investor pitch. Is that a good idea, or should those be 2 separate audiences, 2 separate messages?
Yeah, that's a huge trap for SaaS companies. And I understand why so many companies fall into this trap, because there are so many startups that have such a great technology and they're so passionate about bringing this solution to market and making an impact in the world. And that's a wonderful thing. And a lot of them are creating amazing technology and solving very difficult problems around the world. And I commend that. But if you're trying to sell to an investor, you have one pitch. And if you're trying to sell to a user, you have a very, very different pitch. And you have to keep those separate, because those kind of save the world messages, those don't work on users. They don't really care about the big picture. They care about what's in front of them. They care about what is happening the next day. And a lot of times they don't even care about saving money or saving time, because it's too far down the line. It's too far removed from their immediate reality. You have to work when you're pitching to users on bringing the messaging as close as possible to their current reality. You want to give them a win that they can see themselves actually accomplishing within the next quarter. Like, for example, if Harvard is trying to advertise to applicants to apply to Harvard, they're not going to talk about graduating from Harvard. They're going to talk about that moment where the new student gets their acceptance letter and puts on the sweatshirt. That's the kind of model you want to think about, because that's something they can imagine. That's something that an 18-year-old can visualize. Now, a middle manager is not going to be thinking every day about the company's bottom line, but they are thinking about how well they can manage the work in front of them and their team's work. And so you want to bring your messaging closer to home.
Yeah, find that quick win. What is in front of them that they're going to perceive as progress or a win really quickly. Yeah,
exactly.
I think it's a really good example, thinking about graduation when you're first looking for colleges. It's so far away. Or thinking about the job I'm going to get afterwards. I mean, those are good ideas, but it's really what is the next win? And for the 18 years old applying to colleges, it's getting into that school you really want to get into.
Yeah, and the same is true when you're selling anything. You want to sell what you want to sell a moment, you want to sell the win that they're going to be able to visualize and realize and appreciate.
The middle manager is not thinking about saving the company, making money, saving money. They're thinking about how do I, improve my social status inside the organization? How do I make my team outperform? How do I be noticed by upper management? How do I move forward in my career?
Exactly. And so those are
different motivation.
Yeah, those are the things that are really going to matter to a middle manager. Now, you mentioned the buying committee, and actually that ties in well to this conversation, because I think that a lot of times we are B2B, more enterprise level companies want to create different messaging, and they want to target the CEO, or they want to target upper management, people who are holding the purse strings or have the final decision. And I think that's also a mistake, because they're usually brought in later in the conversation. They're not the people who have a lot of time to open emails or go through and research different solutions. Or if they see an ad, they might not even look at it. They might pass it off to somebody lower down on the hierarchy.
Yeah.
And so the next question I usually get is, well, should you create this kind of messaging for CEOs? Should you create higher level messaging for somebody who is going to see the impacts of that solution across the company? And I would say no for that as well. Not for the same reason, but because they're not usually involved in the buying process early on.
Ready to future-proof your company and scale to new heights? Dive into the ultimate resource designed for SaaS founders and C-suite executives. Champion Leadership Group gives you an unfair advantage in scaling up revenue and outwitting competitors. Imagine solving your biggest scaling headaches and hitting 5, 10, 20 million ARR and beyond with ease. We take away the guesswork and the grunt work and replace it with a proven framework supporting you with our on-demand fractional C-suite team, the powerful SaaS Fuel operating system built into software, and a thriving community of fellow scaling founders. Those are the 3 pillars of exponential growth. If you're stuck at your current revenue level, this is your ticket out. Feel like your company is the world's best kept secret? We amplify your success. Now, hey, if you're already crushing it, but too busy to breathe, we got you. We'll free up 20% of your time in the first month, because now is the time to upgrade from traction to scale. If you're ready to work smarter, not just grind harder, schedule a 10-minute growth brainstorm. It's free, and we'll pinpoint the #1 thing blocking revenue. For more, visit championleadership.com. That is where leaders evolve and companies transform. So maybe that's something, the messaging goes into a proposal or something like that, but it's not necessarily something you lead with on the website or run ads to.
Yeah.
Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, that's oftentimes going to be somebody for something that a salesperson is going to deal with. And even at that, it's probably going to be like the salesperson who manages a POC and closes the deal. It's not going to be in the initial stages of the conversation.
So it's really making sure that you have the right messaging for each stage of the buying journey and who's involved and how do they see the world, and providing messaging that resonates with them. Yeah,
exactly. You want to be really careful about crafting that story to each person.
Yeah. So what are some strategies for creating effective account-based marketing campaigns that resonate, with those high quality leads, and maybe it is the buying committees?
Yeah, account-based marketing, I see it's more and more popular these days, because the world of paid media is changing a lot. And for account-based marketing, it can be very efficient for a lot of companies. And we all know that we don't have, no one has money to throw around these days. So we want to be as careful as possible with our marketing spend. So when it comes to ABM, I think that you have to even be more specific, because you're dealing with one account and you're dealing with an enterprise account. So you want to do your research even more and figure out, include as many details as you can. When you're writing copy, you want it to be, the more specific you can be, the better. And a lot of people are afraid to be specific. because they are afraid of making a mistake. They're afraid of saying something that is not going to be perfectly relevant. Now, sure, you should do your research on the company. You should understand who these people are and what they care about, what they're going through. But the more specificity you can have, the better. And I think that's where ABM comes into play. Now, if you are targeting upper level managers in an account, then there is a different strategy that I use. So oftentimes when I'm writing, I use a formula called problem agitation solution, PAS. It's a very fundamental copywriting formula. You start with the problem, you agitate the problem, then you present the solution. However, I don't use that if I'm working on strategic ABM campaigns. Instead, I use a different formula, and that's called desire, objection, solution. So why do I do this? If you are talking to somebody who is not directly involved in the weeds, they are not dealing with everyday problems, they're sort of overseeing things, then agitating those pain points is not going to be as effective because they don't feel that pain as much. So instead, you start with the desire. What does success look like to them? And you're going to start by describing that, making them want that, making them salivate a little bit. Then you say the objection, what's preventing you from reaching that goal? And then you present the solution. And I found that that's very, very effective for ABM campaigns.
That's really smart. It's really, not just having one tool in the toolbox, but really figuring out, having multiple tools and then which one is the right one for this situation.
Yeah. And don't be afraid to test these out. This is how I figured out all of these tricks by writing different emails, seeing which one performs the best. Writing short emails, writing long emails, writing descriptive emails, writing vague emails. You can, if you are constantly testing, eventually you will eventually you'll improve. Testing is really the key when it comes to copywriting because no one's going to be right 100% of the time. So the more that you iterate, the more that you try different things, the more successful you'll be.
And when you test, how do you know when you have a good result that you're ready to take action on? How long do those tests run? And then what makes you say this is a winner, this is a loser?
I mean, it depends on what platform you're running on. So if you're running on LinkedIn, for example, because you can do great ABM campaigns on LinkedIn because they have such great targeting abilities.
Sure.
Then what I call it testing hygiene. What is testing hygiene? You want to make sure that you're testing one thing at a time, like using a scientific method. You want to pick a variable and test it. So if that variable is the sort of the targeting, then it's the targeting. If it's the copy, it's the copy. If it's the CTA, it's the CTA. If it's the design, it's the design. My point being, you test one variable at a time to see if it works. So run a couple of different ads with different copy, but the same visual. And then you can see which copy resonates with people. And if you're spending a lot of money, these things really matter. So you want to be testing everything. Don't assume oh yeah, we totally know our product. We know it inside and out. This messaging is going to work. Because I promise you, at least 50% of the time, you'll be surprised. Because people are irrational creatures and they do strange things. So even if I would say that the important thing to remember is that you want to start testing even if you don't have perfect data. Even if your results are not 100% statistically significant, you want to keep testing because the more tests you run, the more confident you'll be in your results. Don't wait for having huge data infrastructure and $100,000 to spend a month to be able to run tests on your messaging. because you should be running tests as soon as possible to get that feedback. And then I would say if you're running email campaigns, which is another common tactic for ABM, you can actually look a lot at quality, because the number of conversions is not the only metric you want to look at. Click-through rate, open rate, conversion rate, these are all important metrics. But sometimes it actually helps for ABM to go into the CRM and look at which leads are coming through. Do they have the right titles? What seniority level are they? Are they from the right accounts? Now, ideally, we would be able to just look and say, okay, we got this many opportunities. But for smaller campaigns or smaller companies, sometimes you have to actually do that manual work and say, okay, is this the kind of quality I want? Because anytime you're running a campaign, but specifically for ABM, quality is just as important, if not more important, than the quantity of leads. So I would say that if you have a metric to measure quality, then that's great, whether that's lead scoring or number of SQLs, MQLs, opportunities, or some other metric, then that's great. But if not, then you can actually go through and say, okay, what percentage of the leads that came through this campaign were the kind of leads that we're looking for?
Yeah. That's really helpful. I mean, just not having to have giant budgets to do the tests. What performance marketing techniques have you seen to be most effective in consistently improving those conversion rates or improving the metrics, specifically for SaaS startups, maybe scrappy startups that don't have giant ad budgets?
So I would say that this is really scary for a lot of startups to realize. But I would say that, sure, you have to have Google. You have to have retargeting, because you should be retargeting anyone who comes to your website, especially if they've been to a strategic page like your pricing page, for sure. Sometimes a little bit of sponsored social posts, that can be helpful. But I would actually say don't underestimate the power of brand campaigns, because Google is really meant to capture demand. Like, sure, you can run competitor campaigns on Google. That's really important, because you're going to capture any leads that are looking for your competitor. They're high intent, they're highly aware. Definitely, you should be bidding on your brand. And you should be bidding on very obvious keywords that are connected to your sphere. But beyond that, you really shouldn't underestimate the power of like running YouTube campaigns or running Facebook campaigns on colder audiences, because even if they don't necessarily click through, they're going to go and look for your name on Google and then go to your website. And a lot of times that traffic, like when you go on Google Analytics, it shows up as direct traffic. So people will say, right, oh, well, these campaigns aren't working. Where are all these direct leads coming from? Right. Those are connected, and that's an easy thing to miss. And it feels like paying money for ads is super expensive and super wasteful. I hear that, and I can feel how I can feel their hesitation. I can understand why they would be hesitant to spend so much on that. But if you're going to invest in paid media, number one, you should be investing at least a certain amount, because it's not always a linear correlation. You have to spend at least a certain amount in order to see results for a lot of platforms. And if you're spending at least a certain amount, brand campaigns can really, really help you out.
Yeah, attribution is one of those things that it's pretty sticky in trying to figure out where did the leads come from and what really is generating that traffic, especially when you see them come in direct. Like, how did they get there? What was it? And is there a good way to capture that or help segment traffic or be able to capture better data for lead source?
Well, ideally, yes, you'd be able to use some of these expensive attribution softwares. But also, if you stop the campaign and suddenly you see a dip
the lead stuff
in branded traffic, then that's a really good sign that that channel is bringing in leads. This is one of the things that I think Monday.com, worked at Monday.com for a while. What they did so well, they invested in brand very early on and very, very aggressively. And made sure that everyone knew the name Monday.com. So lots and lots of YouTube ads, lots and lots of Facebook ads. And it's sort of a risky move to invest that much money in advertising so early on. But I really think that it pays off.
Yeah. And as leads come in, marketing a lot of times is, viewed. I mean, their metric is, MQLs, and then those are passed over to sales and SQLs. And there's a conflict a lot of times between sales and marketing of, sent you a bunch of leads and you didn't do anything with them. And sales says, you sent us all these leads and they're all garbage. How do we foster collaboration and feedback and productive discussions between sales and marketing?
Yeah, that's an age-old question.
It is.
I've found that I don't use the term open communication because it sounds like such a buzzword. But I'll tell you what I did. I asked for the salespeople's help because there's a funny thing about, we talked about human psychology. If you do something for somebody else, they won't appreciate you as much as if you ask for a favor. If you want somebody to like you, you want to ask them for a favor. Sort of a strange twist of logic. But if you ask somebody for a favor, number one, they feel helpful, they feel needed, and they don't feel like they owe you. If you do something for them, they'll feel like they owe you. But also it's great to ask people for their advice, for their opinion. They feel valued, they feel respected. So what I love to do is I love to bring salespeople into the fold and say, what kind of insights are you hearing? What kind of phrases really affect people? What messaging do you find hits? Or what kind of messaging doesn't work on people? And then I'll show them some of the copy that I'm working on, some of the ads that I'm working on, ask for their opinion, ask for their input. And then they feel like their perspectives are valued and respected, and that they understand a little bit more about what we're going through. So that's what I've done. In terms of aligning on metrics, I think that's going to look different for every company. Like the earlier that you can implement some sort of lead scoring or MQL and be very strict on the definition, the better, right? Because if MQL doesn't mean anything, then it's not going to be helpful. If you can come up with a very strict definition for what an MQL is, then that's going to be very helpful for everyone. You have to be very tactical. But I can speak from my perspective that, because I'm a copywriter, so I'm more involved in the messaging, that if you can keep open channels of communication, like go over, ask for somebody's opinion, say, oh, can you jump on Slack for 5 minutes? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I'd love to hear what's working for you. I used to have like a forum every month where I would bring sales and marketing people together. And I would have a marketer bring up something that they were working on, whether it was a homepage or a landing page or an email. And then the salespeople would all give their thoughts, give their feedback. And it turned out to be a very healthy, productive forum. So I think that can be really helpful as long as it's very casual. I think if it's too formal, then like if it's a meeting where people go over KPIs and people argue about whether something was an MQL, like that ends up being a little bit too stuffy. But if you can keep those kind of open forums, then I think it fosters a culture of collaboration.
So how can companies adapt their sales approaches to better resonate with buyers? And what role does marketing play in that adaptation?
I think that the same principles generally apply if you're trying to convince somebody. You want to make sure you're empathetic. You want to mirror back their pain points back to them. And you want to tell a story. If you're demoing a platform, you want to make sure that you're showing a use case. You're not dumping a bunch of features. I think that this is something that sales people and marketers do equally, sort of list all of because we get so excited. Wow, you have such a cool platform and we want to show you everything. And here are all of the things that you can do. And
big feature dump, yeah.
Exactly. That's so overwhelming to users. So I think when it comes to pitching the platform, you want to sort of pare it down and show them, give them a story about how the platform is going to help them in their daily lives and what their life is going to look like with the platform.
So looking ahead, what trends do you foresee in digital marketing for SaaS companies? I mean, we've got AI, potential cookieless future. I mean, lots and lots of changes going on. What trends do you see, and how can startups prepare to stay ahead of the trends?
Great question. I think that I can speak for my field for PPC. I think that it's going to be more and more important now that TikTok is going to be a strategic platform. Lots of B2B companies are starting to advertise on TikTok. It's more and more important that copy doesn't look like an ad. That the messaging we use has to be fresh, has to be jargon free, and it has to feel organic. The average person sees at least 4,000 ads a day. And
Wow.
We're so good at detecting ads. We can sniff an ad from a mile away that we don't even see it. We literally don't even see what it says. We block it out. It's a phenomenon called banner blindness. And so what I'm starting to see, and I think this is going to become more and more important further on, and I think it's true in general, but B2B SaaS is slow to catch on, that you have to make ads that look and feel like an organic social post so that people are actually going to pay attention. They're going to be interested. They're going to want to see it. So I am starting to see this with more, progressive SaaS companies. But I think it's going to be a necessity rather than something fun and quirky to do.
Nice. Well, where can people learn more about you online and, of course, SimilarWeb?
Well, you can visit the similarweb.com website. Really cool platform, especially if you're in marketing or sales. And to find me, you can find me on LinkedIn. My name is Naomi Soman, and I would love to connect.
Outstanding. We'll make sure and link both of those in the show notes. Naomi, it's been a pleasure. Such great information today. Thanks for being on SaaS Fuel.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks again, Naomi, for coming on the show and sharing your insights and resources. You can learn more about Naomi at storylogic.com, storylogic, Logick.com. And of course, be sure to check out SimilarWeb and the cool stuff they're doing over there. And that is similarweb.com. As always, all links, highlights, resources, and full show notes are available at saasfuel.com. Be sure to check us out on YouTube as well. It's at Champion Leadership. Full episodes, video shorts, outtakes, training, lots of stuff out there for you. Thought leader share. Share this episode with someone you know has a great origin story and needs to reveal it to the world. Everyone who shares this week gets a viral victory cape. Put that thing on and your brand transforms into a social media superhero, instantly turning casual scrollers into loyal followers, likes into shares, and viral power is so strong, even your cat videos will be trending by breakfast. Sounds pretty good. But join us next Tuesday, where our founder is Brian Parks, founder and CEO of Bigfoot Capital, as he shares how he's helped over 50 SaaS companies achieve $1 billion in enterprise value through non-dilutive growth capital. And then his own journey also as a SaaS co-founder with a 9-figure exit and now an investor there and founder of Bigfoot Capital. Next week on our SaaS Fuel Expert Series, we have Andy Culligan, and he turns marketing into a revenue machine. We'll be talking about the difference between brand building and demand generation, scalable marketing, and aligning marketing and sales. How many of us want that? Aligning marketing and sales better. We can all have some help with that, right? Well, I will see you next time, and as always, enjoy the journey.
Thanks for listening to SaaS Fuel. Full show notes for each episode, which includes a summary, key takeaways, quotes, and any resources mentioned, are available at saasfuel.com. Be sure to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're enjoying the content and getting value from these episodes, please leave us a rating and review at ratethispodcast.com/SaaSfuel. We'll be sure to read these out on future episodes.